Yeah, just give us a
What's my normal opening? All right, everybody, welcome back to Real Estate Unfiltered. Tonight, it's just the regulars. I'm joined by Jay Kestel, Zach Coffey, and as always, I'm Craig Shulman. We're glad to have everyone back and listening. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus, but we are back in full swing. We can't thank you guys enough for tuning in and listening and watching. All we ask is that you like, subscribe, do all the things that you do. This is episode 6, so we are barreling ever closer to double digits. So
can't believe it.
It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing when you think about it and think where this all started. But we've had some phenomenal guests on. Tonight it's just going to be us, and we're just going to talk about some funny stuff, right? We got some pretty interesting, funny stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
We've got some exciting guests coming up. Not to tip our hand too much, but we're gonna have some real estate specific guests come on, talk about home warranties, HVAC. We do have an HVAC technician lined up to come in and kind of tell us what to do as we transition over into winter and our furnaces and upkeep and things like that. We have a home warranty representative that's going to come up, and I can even share a little bit about that tonight and some of the things that I'm going through right now with the home warranty company. And radon. We're going to talk some radon. So did you know that the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States, Zach, is radon?
Only because I know people who work there.
Okay. So it's all important stuff. So we're going to get to that. Tonight's going to be a little bit lighter episode. We're going to poke some fun at Jay, obviously. I mean, that's pretty easy, but outside of that, we'll see where it all takes us. There is one piece of business that we do have to discuss, and that is the Real Estate Unfiltered Trinity Jinx that's going on right now. Oof. And that probably we need to lead the show with that because if you listen back a couple episodes ago, and actually it's an episode that we just released, and it happened after the St. X Trinity game, but we made a little wager, and Jay lost that wager.
I don't remember that.
I think we've got that on. There's no way you can edit that out, right, Zach? Like that's already cut. And
that's definitely cut in there already.
Okay. So Mr. Kestel did agree if Trinity lost to paint his face green and gold. So in an upcoming podcast, we're definitely going to have that. He's going to pay off that bet. I would like to do it potentially with the Radon group because I think that one. Sure. Yeah, I think that one would be pretty good. But so where this jinx originates from, Zach, so it's not one thing that they lost to St. X, right? Because that's one thing. But if everybody remembers back to the Leah Gantz episode, her son plays for Ballard.
Oh no!
And I don't know if you saw the scores from last week's games.
Yeah.
But Ballard took down the Shamrocks for the first time since 1995. So
first time since I've been alive.
Oh
my God.
Of course it is.
Wait a minute. Never say that out loud again because you just made me feel super old. So if anyone listening or watching of the tens and tens of people that we have that tune in to us, if you have a loved one or a neighbor that is playing Trinity in an upcoming football game, if you reach out to us, we'd love to get you on the podcast and guarantee that win for your team. So just put it out there.
I got nothing. You're right. I got nothing.
Put it out there and go. And then Zach, the reason we're kind of on a little hiatus is Zach took a vacation on us. So where'd you head off to, Zach?
We went to Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
And then got Hurricane.
Is that
Dawn.
the Redneck Riviera? Is that what they call Myrtle Beach? Or am I?
They call it the Dirty Myrtle.
Dirty Myrtle.
But
it sounds like a drink. It sounds like a drink you get at a bar.
It is a drink.
Is it?
Yes,
What's
it is.
in that?
I have no idea.
That's your homework assignment. You got to find out what's in a Dirty Myrtle, and then we got to get the ingredients up here on the set.
Yeah, we go and we got Hurricane Dawn, so we left early.
Okay.
And then we went to Gatlinburg on the way home because we didn't want to come home yet. So
nice.
We went to Gatlinburg and drank.
Gatlinburg's kind of your thing, right? So how many times a year do you go to Gatlinburg?
We try to go once per season.
And I apologize for the motorcycle gang next to us, but if you can hear it, there's.
So speaking of Gatlinburg,
yeah,
they just had a fire down there.
Like
a few days ago.
A few days ago.
Yep, one of
I
the
didn't
one of the
know that.
restaurants or bars or something.
Oh, I didn't. I have not heard this.
I
do you
don't
know which one it was?
No, I do not know. But yeah, if they look it up.
Damn.
So let's tie this all together. So I really think what he's saying, Zach, and what we've kind of drawn from past podcasts is that your rolling felony bag that you have, right? There's a mysterious fire in the
week
place where
after
you
I leave.
vacationed.
You caused the hurricane.
You
too, probably.
could have had something to do with it. I'm just
Man.
saying. So if anybody out there is listening, and I mean, if there's a reward offered, then just make sure Jay and I get a cut, and we can.
Right.
I can tell you where Zach's going to be,
Felonious
and
behavior.
we can set that all up. But
Yep.
so back from vacation, recharge, right?
For the most part, yeah.
Good.
For the most part. The
Why
beach
not?
was cold in October.
Was
I
it's
had never been that late before, but it was really cheap, so that's why we went.
Right.
They probably do that for a reason, I think.
It wasn't far enough south.
Well, yeah, that's true. You know, the other thing that happened in the time between the last couple of podcasts, we had the Gaslight Festival here, which was a great time,
did.
right? That was a good time. We had a lot of people here at the office, and
Cold
we'll go-
snacks.
Yeah, we had some cold snacks, as Zach would call those 12-ounce beverages, hidden deep in the cooler. But we had a great time. We had a great turnout, and you know, I think Jay even put something out there about some prizes for anybody listening to the podcast and stop by and mention
Yep.
it. And we actually had somebody come by and mention it, and they
Yep.
got a little gift card.
Yeah, they did.
We went through a whole bottle of, or jar, I should say, of the banana pudding stuff. That was opened and gone that night.
of the moonshine. Yeah,
Yep.
that stuff was yeah.
Did you see what they put out today?
That stuff can sneak up on you.
Eggo waffles.
They go waffle moonshine.
Yes. So now I'm like
What?
really tempted to drive 4 hours to Gatlinburg just to buy
That's-
a couple
Does
jars.
that
and bring
even
it back.
sounds
sound
terrible.
good?
That sounds, dude. I think it sounds awesome, dude.
So, man,
They had blueberry pancake too. I didn't buy that though. That was pretty good.
Now the blueberry pancake might be okay because blueberries, right? You can get some.
but what redeeming
Eggo?
quality do
It's-
Eggo
I think
waffles
it's
have?
I think it's actually called Eggo Nog. So it's like eggnog made with waffles. I don't know. Haven't had it.
I think you're just making stuff up now, or like,
Dude, I'm
you're
serious.
into Stranger Things and you're only thinking about
serious.
Eggos. I don't know. My daughter eats Eggos every morning for breakfast, so she thought it would be a good idea to get Eggo Pop-Tarts. Newsflash, they're terrible. Like, if
Really?
a 10-year-old girl won't eat Eggo Pop-Tarts, it's not good.
Just
So-
deep fry 'em.
Well, you could do that, but I'm just saying, I can't get behind the Eggo moonshine. Like
Yeah, nope.
that sounds awful to me. So.
And also, we were talking about football. You know, I think it would be in our best interests here to start mailing postcards to Scott Satterfield's house because he's going to be selling that thing for too much longer.
He might sooner than later. That's for sure.
we got to start planting our name now.
Some of the posts that I've seen on social media, I think you're onto something. But they did win. They went into Virginia and they won, and so here we are. Boston College loss was a tough one, but we talk about them Cats too because they've had.
I don't want to talk about it.
They've had 2 rough games.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, so we can get into all that. I'm sure we will. We've got a great show kind of ahead of us, but I wanted to kind of start off with that whole Trinity Jinx thing and get that out there so anybody listening can take advantage of that. We would have gotten this recording started a little earlier, but Jay was late getting here, so I'll let him explain why he was a little tardy in his attendance to the podcast tonight.
Will you move my mouse? Future Zach, cut this out. God damn it. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it was still going. All right, sick. All right, now you
So
can
Jay,
may
why were you late
start
tonight?
again.
So slightly late, barely late, fashionably late. Just had a little project at one of the rental properties. We had a problem with the front door and a deck that was needed some attention, and so we gave the attention it needed today. And yeah.
Well, and I think that's important to talk
Very
about,
nice.
and some of the stuff that we talk about on the podcast, you know, is tied obviously back to real estate. But you know, you own rentals, you're an investor. It's just important, I think, that people know that you know you just don't buy these things, collect rent, and then everything is you know happy and so forth. So
Right.
there's
Yeah, I think people always think that it's easy to make money. that it is passive income. I don't know if it's necessarily passive income. I mean, there is some work that goes along
Right.
with it. I could have sent contractors over there, but
But
I'm trying to save some money.
you're a
So
buff guy. So
some of the
you're
stuff
out
I can
there.
do. But I had a couple people with me today, and we got it was about a 12 by 20 deck, a covered deck. We got it taken off all the way down, put in a dumpster, and it's ready to be hauled out. It took us about 5 hours.
Wow.
And so we're going to fix the front door that has a little rot at the bottom from where maybe some water ran back for
Okay.
years, and kind of determine if we're going to do a new deck or a patio or what for
So
the tenant.
it's just something
Nice.
important to consider when you're looking at rentals is just the potential upkeep, potential
Right.
projects. These roofs, HVAC systems, water heaters, they have an expected life. So you have to plan for those things when you own them. At one point, I owned a fourplex, and they tell you the happiest day of your life is when your children are born. I would argue that. The happiest day of my life was the day that I sold that fourplex. But keep in mind, this was a time that I was doing real estate part-time, and I had a partner in the property, and he took care of all the maintenance of the property. But it was, we had some issues. But the multifamily is different than what, single family is. I mean, it's just a whole different dynamic. You don't have people living on top of each other, complaining music's too loud.
Yep.
Yeah, most investors or most guys that I know, and myself included, will build in a little bit of a buffer each month. So they take their money that they're making, right? If they have a mortgage, they break down that money, that free money, right? Cash
Right.
flow type money, and build in a 10% vacancy rate or
Right.
whatever for maintenance. But that takes a while to build up, right? So when you're
Absolutely.
dealing with a repair of, mine's going to be somewhere probably around $4,000. That takes a lot when you're only
Right.
you got 10% built in for that.
Yeah,
easy into
absolutely.
it. So you got to have a contingency plan in place, but it's just you got to make the property livable. You got to
Yeah.
keep the tenants happy.
Right.
Again,
Right,
it's
right.
it's a good investment, and you're not gonna lose on it still.
So I've got, one story I can share on the air, one I probably can't. That'll probably be for like the unfiltered. But it should have been a red
Patreon.
flag when I bought the fourplex that I bought. Literally a couple days before we closed on it, my partner and I closed on it. One of the guys that lived upstairs was robbed at gunpoint in his unit and shot in the head. He survived, and he's as far as I know, he's healthy now. I kind of know who he is. Probably should have been a red flag for me, but in the meantime, our plans were to rehab this unit and to get we're having a hard time getting in the unit. There's a whole nother story I can tell off the air that's it's amazing, right? But some of the stories that if you sit down and talk to landlords that have owned a lot of properties, you hear so many stories. Like one Thanksgiving Eve, I had sent an eviction notice to a tenant, and these are just lessons. Again, I was new to the industry. This is back in 2005. I was new to real estate, right? I just started selling real estate.
Right.
And I just didn't know any better, right? So I had this guy out to my house to do some tree work at my house, right? Unbeknownst to me, he had just gotten out of prison. I didn't know that, right? And we did background checks and the whole deal, but for whatever reason, that part was missed, right? So we
big one to
send,
miss.
yeah, a little bit. So we sent an eviction notice right around probably the week before Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving Eve, my phone rings, and it's the guy that had done some tree work at my house and threatened me and my family and everything else. And so, man, and I only say that is it's a cautionary tale. I mean, you just have to be aware of what you're getting into, and you also have to be very diligent. Again, that was the first tenant I ever put in a place. I probably missed some things on background checks, applications, credit checks, all that stuff, right? So you live and learn, and that was a pretty valuable lesson to learn. So
Yeah, you got
can
to
imagine.
vet
That's-
them the best you can, right? So obviously that's what you try to do, but Sometimes they slip.
And
through
again,
the
this was
cracks.
2005, so
Yeah.
we didn't have the resources online that we have now. And now there are actually, and I've used them in the past on other rental properties. There are ways to do these credit checks, background checks, etc., that give you a really good snapshot of a tenant. And
Just forewarn them.
well, you could use Forewarn, exactly, which is an app that we have access to. So, but again, just a cautionary tale that you have to know these things, because everybody sees all these glamour stories about owning rental properties. But Jay just spent his entire day with a Sawzall and a chainsaw and a 10-yard dumpster, and tomorrow is fix the door, and the day after that's put the deck back on or pour a patio.
Yeah.
So. Those are the things that go into it, or you pay a contractor to do it all. And Jay probably saved probably 60% of what you would have paid if you're paying a contractor. But if you're handy and you do those things, it's absolutely, we always had a problem. We had a fourplex right behind a busy shopping center, but there was no divider between the shopping center and our dumpster and our units, our fourplex and the dumpster. And every weekend, I would get a phone call about another couch, another chair, another intake, whatever being thrown into our dumpster. And then that instantly was not their problem. It became my problem, to the point where we put up security cameras. We actually went to the trouble to put 6x6 posts in the ground about probably 4 feet high, drill holes to them, and run high tension cable through that. So they could not drive because they were putting ruts in our grass. And so in order to avoid that, we put this cable barrier in. Literally lasted 2 days, cut the cable,
Or they'll cut the post down. Yeah.
So these are just things, again, to be aware of. I think rental property is a phenomenal way to invest money. I think historically, if you look at property values, if you look at passive income potential and all that stuff, it's fantastic, right? But it's not pain-free, right? There's some heartache and there's some stuff that goes along with that. So just things to consider.
There's property managers too that can do a lot of that for you, but you got to pay them a fee. So,
right.
You
And we have access to a lot of those. It's not something that you or the three of us do as far as property management is concerned. But there are certain brokerages, one in particular that I'm very familiar with, that, the big misnomer is that, and actually I've reached out to them to be on the podcast as well, but the big misnomer is that you have to have certain number of doors before they'll manage your portfolio. And with this particular property management group, they'll take one, and they'll actually put it on the website, put it on a website. They'll get it on all that. Like Zillow's a big deal for us, but there are some rental websites that they get it on. They manage apps, so on and so forth. They vet your tenants, and you pay them a fee, and it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 10% of gross rents or $75, whichever is greater. Now, break, fix, things like that, you're out of pocket, and you're going to use their contractors, right? So you've got those expenses as well. So it's really a matter of how hands-on you want to be. Jay's a hands-on investor. Toilet clogs or whatever. That's probably a bad example.
I don't unclog my own toilets, but I do have a really good plumber that gets there quickly.
So got to tear a deck or a covered porch off the front of a house, or something like that. Jay's going to do it. Need to build a deck, need to fix a handrail, things like that. You're probably going to jump in and do. But there are ways, depending on how involved in these properties you want to be, that you can be. So something to consider. As we talk about that, I think it's important also to kind of talk about where the market is. And so we've been talking about this market for the last few weeks, about where things are. And really not a huge change. Inventory's jumped up to just over 2,100 units, right? Still significantly behind where it should be.
Yeah.
But people are still buying and selling houses. I closed on 2 houses the last 2 weeks and have gotten 2 under contract in the last 2 weeks. I know, Jay, you just had 2 closings. One in particular I think we need to talk about. Actually, we might want to talk about it now. I mean, if you...
Yeah, we can. I had a closing today with a wholesaler. For the listeners, the 10 listeners that we might have, tell you kind of a little bit about what a wholesaler is. I think they've been around for a while, but they're just getting to be really popular now, I think. And you don't have to have any license. You don't really have to have any. You don't have to know anything about real estate to be a wholesaler, right? And what these guys are doing, or girls, or whatever, they're basically buying homes and assigning that, or getting a house under contract and assigning that contract to a true buyer, right?
And where they make their money, correct me if I'm wrong, and just from I've done several deals with wholesalers, but they make their money in the assignment of the contract.
Yeah.
So there's a spread between what they have, what that they got the house under contract, what they turn the house for, and that spread's going to be their profit.
And then that could be, a couple $1,000s up to maybe, I've heard stuff of $20,000 on a home, right? So they never truly own the home. They never truly have any money out of pocket.
It's purely just a transaction.
It's a transaction,
it's
right?
a
So they're just
transaction.
linking people together. We had the buyer on this one, one of the cash investor that I had, and we went and looked at the house, bought it as it sat, needs a bunch of work. They had a couple offers on the table. We were able to come out on top of it, and we just closed on it today. And
the whole transaction start to finish took you how long?
About 13 days, 13 days.
So
That's awesome.
In less than 2 weeks, you were able to get a property under contract, do proper inspections, and close.
Yeah.
I think that also the thing to consider, a couple things, but one thing to consider is there other ways to skin a cat, right? There are other ways to come across deals, right? Off-market deals or a wholesale deal that, the general public might not have access to. And literally your buyer, if you wouldn't have kind of fostered this relationship, may not have gotten this deal. But it's based on this relationship that you've built with this wholesaler. You've now have the ability to find some of these deals.
Yeah, and I've heard some horror stories. Sorry, I got some dust in me from cleaning up. I've heard some horror stories about some wholesalers that are shady and not kind of professional. The group that I dealt with today, I'm gonna leave their name out of it, but fantastic. So hope to do another deal with them, and I think they feel the same way about my communication.
And I've got one as well, and I've done 3 deals with him, and he's been phenomenal. I've got an interesting story actually on wholesalers, but I think the important part of what we're talking about too is that it's we have access to something other than the MLS, right? So whether it be estate sales, whether it be wholesalers, there are ways that we can find properties for clients other than Zillow, MLS, things like that. And you kind of going above and beyond and kind of bridging that gap for your client. They've got a house that they're super happy with, and they're okay with all the work that it needs.
Right.
But I think there are more deals coming. Got a great story about a wholesaler, and Jay was actually Jay was not involved. I was talking to him on the phone one day, right? So I have this house listed, and the guy turns out to be a great guy that's listing the house, just fell on some hard times, right? Whatever. And we list his house, and it sat on the market for a little bit. We were probably a little overpriced. There's a backstory to this, but for the sake of this story, not really pertinent. But the funny thing is that I had a wholesaler, you're speaking of shady wholesalers, I had a wholesaler call me, and this guy was either new to the business or just had no clue what he was doing. And he told me he wanted to pay cash for the house, wanted to write an offer sight unseen. I told him I wouldn't do that I had to meet him at the house, and he was going to give me both sides of the commission. That was his big selling point, right? I'll give you both, you get both sides because you'll represent both. So I said, that's not the way it works. I'll meet you over there. There's some things we'll have to do. So I meet him over the house. He walks through it 5 minutes. He's like, all right, I'll take it. And so I said, well, great. I just happened to bring a contract, right? And we went ahead and wrote it up on a contract. Let me back up. Like, my guy that lived in the house didn't have a driver's license, and his mode of transportation was a bike. And this is November, and it's literally snowing outside, right?
And you're not talking about like Harley.
No. And I'll get to that point. Right. So he has a bike, right? So he has a bike, and he left the house for the showing. And as soon as I was finished, I texted him and told him we were finished, and I had paperwork for him to sign. So the wholesaler left, and I texted my guy. He's on his way back. And I'm calling Jay about something unrelated. And as I'm talking to him, I said, dude, I'm going to have to let you go. He's like, all right. I said, my client just pulled up on his bike, And Jay goes, like Harley? And I go, no, like Schwinn. He was like, oh, okay. So I get off the phone. Client and I sit down, go through the contract. He agrees to accept the contract. We accept the contract. And so in the contract, the buyer had a 10-day inspection period. Well, he calls me up and he says, hey, I just need you to give me the keys to the house so I can get in and do my inspections. I said, wait, that's not how this works, right?
But you wrote your deal up on a GLAR contract,
It was
the
on
one we normally use.
It was on our 7-page Greater Louisville Association of Realtors contract.
Yeah, okay.
The interesting thing is, and where this kind of came and got him, and we got a little pound of flesh on this one, right? So I told him I wasn't going to do that, but I'd be happy to let him and his contractor in for inspections. Because he told me, he said, we're just looking at the scope of the project. We're not going to ask for any repairs, and we actually sold it as is. So I meet him over at the property, unlock the door, and he looks at me and goes, hey, man, you're going to have to wait outside while we talk when the contractor gets here. I was like, man, that's fine. I'll sit in the car. I'll do whatever you need me to do, but I'm not going to give you access to the house without me being here. So I'm in the living room in the front of the house. I hear the contractor pull up, and the guy walks out. The buyer walks out on the porch and yells out the quote unquote I'm using air quotes right now, the contractor's name, and said, "Hey, come on in. The realtor insisted that he had to be here, but he's going to wait outside." And the quote unquote contractor says, "Man, I know Craig. I do deals with him all the time." And the guy's face, he looked like he had just seen a ghost, because he thought that he had something, right? Yeah. His plan was, he had the house, and I'm just going to use arbitrary numbers just to protect the innocent. Let's say, for instance, he had the house under contract for $50,000. He was trying to assign this contract to a flipper that I had already done 3 or 4 deals with for $95,000, right? Right, and that's his profit, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I'm using arbitrary numbers, but they're very similar to what this was. When he realized that we knew each other, he knew the deal was up, right? So I walk outside. My guy that I'd done deals with in the past was literally in the house for 30 seconds. Comes out, leaves. As soon as he leaves, he's lighting me up with text. He's like, "This knucklehead is trying to sell me this house for $95,000. Can you believe?" I said, "Well, if you want to hear the funny part about this, he wrote it on a Greater Louisville Association of Realtors contract, which is non-assignable." And I just got the laughing emojis from the wholesaler, because these guys typically work off of a contract drafted by a real estate attorney. So it's a valid and binding contract that Jay just worked off of.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But it is a little slanted towards the seller of the property, or the assigner of the property, really. But anyway, this guy had no idea that we had him. Like, there was no way he could assign the contract. He bought the house as is. His inspection period expired, and then he never delivered his earnest money check. And so by the contract, you have to deliver your earnest money check within 72 hours. And he was supposed to deliver it to a local real estate attorney, and he didn't do any of those things. And so I had him at breach, right? I had him for breach of contract in 2 areas. Well, one really that was egregious, and the other one, he was trying to assign a contract that was not assignable. He found the Lord and came to this office and fell on his sword and begged for us not to sue for performance or anything else. We took his earnest money, right, which my client was rightfully due. We released the contract, let him go on his merry way. But to your point, there are some wholesalers out there that are either inexperienced or they're shady. Mm-hmm. And you just and so if my guy didn't have representation, right, or if your people didn't have representation today, then potentially you're looking at some. I mean, they can take advantage of you for sure.
Yeah, and they
and there are good ones out there too.
Yeah, there's good ones. I think I dealt with a good one. They closed at a really good closing attorney, Borders and Borders. They handle probably most of them.
Who was going to handle our deal?
Yeah,
that I
handles
had
a lot of the wholesale deals here. So immediately I called them and talked to one of the attorneys over there that we do business with and said, hey, this is what I got. And she's like, send it over to me. I'll let you know if it's legit. So I felt a lot better.
Yeah, and they're very familiar. And these transactions happen in the probably hundreds daily, right?
Yeah.
I mean, around the city. I mean, these happen. So. They happen all the time.
But those wholesalers are great sources for us also
100%
to help, maybe, they sent us one today that we're going to go look at, right?
Right.
Maybe it's something that we're going to act on. I don't know.
Or maybe it's something that one of your investors or Zach's investors or one of the investors I work with.
So it's another great opportunity for us to get some leads or some homes or however you want to look at it for, clients of ours.
Or, if we've talked about some potential investment properties that we want to get in on, flips potentially.
Yep.
So, I just think it's important that people understand that it's just not always realtor to realtor. It's not always FSBO to realtor. It's not always FSBO to buyer. There are all kinds of ways.
Right.
However, if you don't have representation, you can get yourself into a trick. And that's the key to avoid. Now, you were able to negotiate a commission in the deal. You were able to negotiate possession terms and all that stuff, right? Inspections. You guys had inspections, and
we did not have inspections.
Okay.
He did waive his right to inspections, which we don't recommend, right?
Right.
So we we talked through that. But he's a seasoned investor, seasoned flipper, remodeler. He's like, I'm not worried about this at all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But there are other avenues, I guess. And I guess back to what I was saying before. There are other ways to skin a cat.
Yeah. Thank you for catching that.
You got it. So, and then Jay had another closing. So Jay's on a hot streak here.
There you go.
He's on a hot streak. The interesting thing about this last closing that Jay had, he represented the seller, and then they bought from a FSBO unrepresented. And
That's correct.
There are a couple pitfalls or some areas of exposure that your client potentially left himself in. I know that you and I talked about, and I think that's important maybe to share with some people too.
Yeah, he good close friend of mine. I've known him, worked with him for 20 plus years. Has been in his house that he was in for close to 20 years. It was time for him to move on, right? The next chapter for him and his daughter. But yeah, he had already found a property, and he just needed to get his house sold. So that's how I ended up getting the listing.
He found and was already under contract, if I remember correctly.
No, he found it, and it was a yes, I'll take it, like handshake type thing.
Okay. Yeah.
So I reached out to them and asked, hey, do you want me to represent or help with this transaction? Old school country people, and they're like, she's like, honey, we just call up our attorney and he handles it all, and that's how we've done in the past. And I was like, absolutely fine.
Perfect.
I said, just want to offer that I'm there if you need something. But yeah, so he bought that, and we ended up getting him a contract. I said, you got to have a contract of some sort, right? The underwriting is going to need that because he had to get a loan on this particular house. But so he got through all that, but there were some pitfalls that he avoided, but we talked about it too. I said, hey, these are things that you're going to have to watch for,
and some potential. So one thing that Jay and I talked about was early possession, right?
Yeah.
So he took possession of the house early and moved his things in, right?
Right.
So that gets into a very, very tricky area. Both delayed possession and early possession are tricky deals, right?
Yep.
And so for those listening, hopefully, delayed possession, especially in this market that we just came out of, delayed possessions, when I give Jay, I'm buying Jay's house, but in order to make my offer stand out from the other ones, Jay, it's tough moving. I'm going to give you 5 days to move out, right? So that's delayed possession. Now, the issue is you've already closed on the house, and you're going to move out 5 days later. Who carries homeowner's insurance, right? What happens if there's catastrophic loss?
Yep.
What happens if property is damaged? What if you do your walkthrough prior to closing, and then when you go to take possession of the property, they've moved the bed and the bed rails have scratched the walls? I only say that because it's happened to me, right?
Yeah.
So it's a tricky. What if they decide to stay over? What if Jay says, screw you, I want to stay longer? You've got a story like that, I know, that we talked about last night. it's a tough deal.
Man.
It is tough. It all worked out good for him and great for him and the seller. He sent me a picture of his new place and
That's
kind of
awesome.
his view, and he loves it. Worked out great, but I had to say, hey, man, listen.
Be
I
careful.
was
Be
to say
careful.
that freaks me out.
And I had nothing to do with that side of it, right?
Yeah.
But as a friend, and
But
it's
just
a
in
fine
your
line still, but
conversation, just in your
here's some-
conversation with him.
Yeah, here's some things to just watch out for.
Yeah,
So worked
right.
out great for him. So
Say we're about to sign the longest delayed possession I've ever done. And it's gonna be 30 days. I've
So
never
are
done
you
one
guys
that
doing a
long.
lease back, or are they just letting them live there with?
out of the goodness of their heart.
They're just cool with it. They're just gonna let them live
Okay.
there.
And then is there a penalty if they stay later than 30 days? Did you do a delayed possession addendum?
I haven't seen. I have the seller, so I'm
Okay.
going to be receiving from the buyer's agent, right?
Okay.
So I haven't seen the exact terms yet. I just know.
And
it's gonna
I
be
think
30
it's
days, and
important.
My people are like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and it's great to have sellers that are flexible like that. The big issue is what if Jay decides to stay in the house that my clients are supposed to move into? What's my recourse, right?
Yeah.
What's my recourse? We've had incidents in the office where we put it in an addendum that states that any day you're over the day that you're supposed to be out, it's $500 a day, right? That'll motivate you to get your ass out of there. Out of there.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
the thing that scares me about early possession is you're moving things in and potentially even moving yourself in before you close.
Right. And,
Yeah.
and he needed
I
to
would-
close his property to close a new one, right? So he needed the proceeds from his house to make that work. So had that fallen through
And
or
he-
something,
And he probably needed space for his furniture, and he probably needed space for all that stuff. So let's say at the final hour, right? And so we've all seen this stuff happen, right? I mean, I've had a deal not close because somebody took out a loan on a car on a Sunday or a Saturday. I'm sorry, a Saturday, and we were closing Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
And just so run the scenario through your head, and this is a scary part about FSBOs, or not just FSBO. I don't want to say it like it's a dirty word, right? But this is if you're unrepresented, right? And your guy could have had the best intentions in the world. He can't control what happens on the other side with the sale of his house,
No.
and it falls through because of financing, right? You're back on the market with
Right.
the house that you had listed in J-Town, and then you got to go through the
that
whole
is
sales
vacant
cycle.
now because he's moved everything out.
Yeah. And you got to go through the whole sales cycle again,
Yeah.
right? And with no written agreement, there is no ramification for anything that just happened. Here's the other thing. Let's say Jay's guy moves his stuff in and he moves into this house, right? His supposed dream house. And when he looked at it, he didn't realize that the railroad tracks were 500 yards from the house. And then the first night he spends there, the train goes by and wakes his daughter up. And now for 30 years you got to live here. Well, I don't think I want this house anymore, Zach. I'm just not going to show up to closing. And I only say that because this is the stuff that happens, right? These are the stories that we hear.
See, just talking about it makes my blood pressure go up. I
Yeah.
don't, I don't even like
He's
thinking
gonna
about
be checking all those docs when he gets out of here and make sure that everything's
I
set up.
know. Now,
But to
On
tie
edge.
it back to what we do, I think it's important to talk about those things. I think those are potential pitfalls that if your agent doesn't have your best interest at heart, or your agent isn't seasoned, or they just don't know, or you go unrepresented. This is a way to get yourself into a pickle. And we're talking a pickle with a comma and lots of zeros behind that comma. So it's a scary. It can be a scary deal. The advantage of working with a realtor is this is what we do. I mean, this is what we do day in and day out. So we have the experience. If not, in this office, we counted up the other day, it's hundreds of years of combined experience in the office, right? We have 60 agents, and our most tenured in the 20s, so if we ever have a question or we ever have an issue, there's somebody to have a sounding board and talk about. So,
right.
But yeah, so that's.
It worked out, but
Yeah, no,
it doesn't
it-
always work that way.
Well, and the only reason I bring that up, and I think it's important, is that Jay and I had some conversations in and around it. It ties our hands as agents because we can't advise on the other side, right? Because we don't represent them, so we can't really give advice. Now we can tell them these are things that you need to watch for, but we can't as things are happening. walk them through that whole transaction. So you're kind of flying blind or with one arm tied behind your back almost, I think. But Jay did a good job on that one, got that one closed really quickly, and his guy probably couldn't be happier. I mean, and his daughter's going to new school.
Yeah,
and all
new
that
school,
stuff.
new county. So I mean, he's still here in Kentucky, but yeah, he's super excited.
That's good.
Yeah. So, I was a little afraid Jay wasn't going to show up tonight, Zach. I thought he might big time us.
Oh,
Because now,
About to get the verified check mark and everything.
not only is Jay on Real Estate Unfiltered, but you had a big 2 weeks.
I did.
Dude, you're a
taking
baller.
a nap the rest of the week.
Not only that, we actually spent the day down at the lake on Saturday. So, man, he had
Dude, I
Jay's
don't see how
living.
y'all did that.
Jay's living his best life. It was one of the greatest days on the lake. So we were at Nolan Lake, and the weather was absolutely perfect. It was.
Define because I was at Ford Fest with hand warmers. That's what I was doing.
It was hot. In fact, I got hot. I had like a sweatshirt and some joggers on. Man, I got hot. Jay went suns out, guns out. So, dude, he was letting them fly.
What time
Tats
did y'all
were
get down
showing. Like it was a little uncomfortable.
We went out in the afternoon, probably 1 to 2. We went out to probably
Oh,
about
okay. So it was
5
like
or so.
Oh,
We went out
okay.
3 or 4 hours. Yeah, it
full
was good.
sunlight, like literally, man, on the water. We were in the low 70s, I think, on the water probably.
oh, it's not bad. Okay,
nice.
never mind.
And our captain, our boat captain, we didn't go very fast until somebody had pee, and then we had to make it back to the marina, to the campground.
I thought you were all jumping in to go pee.
No, that guy, no.
Hypothermia, man.
You what, dude?
I don't know.
You ever seen the
Seinfeld?
Seinfeld episode, the shrinkage episode? I'm just
I don't know
saying.
if it would have been that cold.
I guarantee it would have been that cold. 60 degrees in the water is cold, man.
I was gonna say because we got up super early. We walked outside and it was like 40 degrees. Then I was like,
And,
Yeah, it was cool.
I was wearing this. That's all I had.
and our diet the whole day was consistent of those cold snacks that you talk about. Yeah.
Cold snacks. There you go.
Just had to stay hydrated. Yeah.
So we definitely stay hydrated. We had a great time, but I digress. Jay, before we went or after?
I think it was Thursday, maybe last
Okay,
Thursday.
so before we went to the lake, after his closing. No, before his closing.
It was last week sometime. I don't remember.
He was on another podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
You getting calls to be on another podcast, Zach?
I am not.
Well, let's be honest here. I didn't get a call.
Oh.
They put something out about a last minute cancellation, so I was like a B-lister or C-lister probably at best. But I reached out to him and said, sure, I'd love to do it. Here's my background. So yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, first of all, the podcast you're on and kind of their
Yeah.
mission, and then kind of what you guys talked about.
Yeah, sure.
And we'll link it in the description too, Zach, right?
Yes.
They have a Facebook page for the ones that have listened in the past. They kind of heard the three of us, our background and stuff. So if you don't know, I came from a fire service background, retired, but that's what I've known my whole life. So this particular group is called First Responder Financial Freedom. There's 3 individuals that run this podcast, and they're from different areas in the country. One's in California. One's maybe Detroit, and the other is, I want to say somewhere out near Baltimore.
And they don't have the elaborate Mayor Realtor studio.
They do not have
like
the
we
studio
do.
like we do, but they did a really good job. And what they do is they're all first responders of some sort, right? I think all of them firemen at one point. Some of them, matter of fact, I think they're all still actively working. But anyway, it's called First Responder Financial Freedom. And it was created mainly because firemen have side hustles of something, cutting grass.
Well, the hours
whatever.
are so conducive to do that.
Yeah.
Because what's a typical fire schedule? You're 20 or 48 on, 24.
Yeah, no, you're on 24, off 48. Around here in Louisville, that's typical.
Okay.
Other places, it's a little different. But so everybody has some type of side hustle they do, make extra money, life after the fire department, right, preparing for that. So these individuals were into real estate, right? And they have a large amount of knowledge. The deals they've done and the amount of rentals that a few of them own is enormous, right? So I just reached out to him and said, hey, I'd be happy to fill in last minute for you. Just let me know. So he's like, great. We'll send you an email link, kind of tell us a little bit about your bio, a little bit about what you do. We'll have you on. So I did that. they said that we'll send you a link to do. They use some type of streaming service. I don't know what that stuff
Right.
is, but anyways,
Yeah, you are the technical engine.
it's like
behind
it
this
looked
podcast.
like a Zoom meeting type thing, right? So there's four blocks, and you can see yourself on the screen and such. But a lot like our podcast, very relaxed. There's nothing really scripted about it. They have some things they want to talk about. And I told them, I said, what are you looking for? Like, what are you going to ask me? I don't want to be set up for failure, right? But what are you going to ask? And he said, it's basically just your journey. Like, what brought you from the fire service to where you are now? So I had the opportunity. We talked for about a little over an hour. I kind of told them my background, what I do, and I'm super, super small time compared to these guys.
Right.
But they were happy to have, I think, someone from another area of the country that was a realtor as well.
Well, and I think it's important to have snapshots from all perspectives of the journey, right? So if you own one rental property, you own 10 rental, you own 500, whatever it is, right? I mean, I think it's important for everybody to see how scalable this whole wealth building situation is, right? I mean, and again, if you do it right, it can be wealth building. If you get into a pickle, I mean, it could drain you, man. There's no question.
Yeah, and it was a good networking experience for me too.
Yeah.
To kind of hear what they do in other areas of the country, how some of those guys got their start. And there's a little side chat bar that we don't have here in ours, but like a Zoom meeting type thing has a little side
Where they can answer
chat,
questions.
and they were
Answer
talking
questions.
shit.
We'll get
basically
there.
to each other.
We got
So,
plans. We got plans
Oh,
for that.
Zach has got all that stuff on his wish list for Christmas. So if anybody's listening, that could be something Zachy wants for Christmas.
So
I need
really
it.
on that though, whether you're a first responder or not, go to their Facebook page, like their page. If you are a first responder or nurses, corrections, or anything like that along those lines, I think you can join their group. I think they kind of limit it to first responders.
Oh, absolutely.
But they're Spotify. You can find them on Spotify. I think I was episode 34. Just got released Monday.
We're closing in on it, man.
But check them out, man, especially if you're first responders or nurses or
Yeah.
something, because a lot of stuff they said and a lot of stuff they said in the previous podcasts I've been listening to, it really hits home for me because of our lifestyle as first responders and some of the stuff we deal with, stress-related things, scheduling and all that. So really good show.
I
Happy
think
to be on.
it's really cool. I think the way media has changed over the last decade, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way that we consume media, I've told this on the podcast before, and I've told you guys, I rarely watch network TV.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, literally everything I watch is typically on YouTube. It's some kind of podcast or it's some kind of deal like that. So to get all these, I mean, it used to be in the day you'd have to go to a radio studio, you had to find time on Terry Miners or whatever show
Right.
you want you want to promote on. Now you can get very specific and listen to exactly what you want to listen to, whether it's self-help, whether it's real estate, whether
for
it's
sure.
whatever it is. And I think it's pretty cool. Kind of to add to that, the way that video media is consumed is amazing. And again, I'll leave names out, but just because of not getting permission or whatever. But I just closed on a house last Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. Last Tuesday, the person that bought the house makes their living solely from producing content on YouTube.
That's awesome.
And not only does this person make a living, they make a ton of money producing
imagine.
content on YouTube. But if you think about it, that business model, right? It used to be that advertisers would buy spots on network TV, right? And when you and I were kids, and we talked about this when James Markert was on, and I just ran into him this weekend. Sends his best to you.
Awesome.
Is pulling for Pennyroyal, and
Let's
so
go.
every time I see him, he asks about Pennyroyal. And but when James was on, right, Cosby Show, America's Funniest Home Videos. I mean, Sunday night was like I used to know the lineup like the back of my hand, but that's what you did, right? That's what
Right.
you did on Thursday nights, Sunday nights. You watch TV, and these Coke, Pepsi, whoever, Radon Systems of Louisville, they paid to advertise. Well, now the viewership on YouTube is so high, they dump their advertising money there, and to
It's expensive.
incentivize good content, right? The content creators are paid very, very well.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you like Mr. Beast,
Oh, dude. Oh man.
Like somebody told me he's closing on a billionaire.
Yeah.
And this guy's pretty cool. I don't know if you know who Mr. Beast is. He's just an
Just
average,
give it all away.
He's an average just dude, right? And he'll even tell you, like, I got no skills. He started doing, I forgot how he started even on YouTube, but he just got all these followers, right? But now he's almost a billionaire.
Yeah.
And-
You should watch some of his videos. They're pretty good.
But he's turned it into philanthropy. He gives money away. Like the other day I was watching, he gave $10,000 to this random guy.
Right.
Like the pizza
Yeah,
delivery guy
that's
came
what
to
it's
his,
about.
his house and he tipped the guy $10,000 or something crazy like that. So now, he even said, I saw in an interview, he's got some kind of disease. I can't remember what it is.
I didn't. Okay.
But anyway, my kids were telling me about it, or my daughter was even telling me about it. But he said, just an average guy, whatever, but there's no way he can possibly spend all this money in his lifetime.
Right.
So he's just he gives houses away. He gave a house away. He gives cars away all the time. He gave Tesla away. He gave all kinds of stuff away.
My favorite video of his, he goes to like a car dealership and he'll like paint a square in the parking lot and he'll get some random person and he was like, all right, whatever you can fit in the square, you can take home. So people are like driving like 20 cars into the square and like parking them and stuff, like trying to get as many
It's
as they
pretty
can.
cool. It is pretty cool. But I mean, my daughter used to, or she still does, watch this one called like Cookie Swirl C, and I think she makes the most. Or anyway, but she used to watch kids play with toys, which used to drive me insane, right? But these people are making a ton of money.
Dude.
In turn, advertisers see all these views and they're dumping tons of money at this thing. So
Yeah, that kid that reviews toys is balling.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan is his name. He's
balling.
got a line of toys named after him. We were
Dude,
talking
I
about
know.
that. We had a fire at the house a couple weeks ago at the fire pit. And we were like, I didn't want you to get all nervous. I said, fire at the house. You were like, oh, shit.
That's, we all looked at Jay like,
He reached for the helmet. You see him reach for the helmet? He's going to put it on. But, yeah, that kid had like a line of toys.
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
But this cat that I closed with the other day, I mean, he makes an amazing living producing content on YouTube, and it's just the whole economy shifted. It's just not. I mean, Jay and I talk about it all the time, but it's just a whole shift in that concept that you have to work a 9 to 5 all the time, right? And we're fortunate enough we don't work 9 to 5s,
Yep.
and we kind of set our own schedule and do what we need to do. But
Yeah.
that whole mindset that you have to work a 9 to 5. Now, I will argue that skilled tradesmen, everybody knows where my stance is on trades. I think there's going to be a shortage of skilled tradesmen.
Dude, they're going to be making
Teachers.
so
Well,
much
nobody wants to
money.
do it now.
Oh, man.
The generation that's coming up now does not
Yeah.
want to be a carpenter or a plumber.
Dude,
I mean, for
give
the
it-
most part, I
No,
don't think.
I think you're 100%.
Give it 10 years and plumbers are going to be just
Oh,
You're
plumbers,
always gonna need
electricians,
plumbers.
Charge
HVAC.
whatever they want.
Electricians, right?
HVAC.
They can't be. Those jobs can't be replaced by, machines.
No, here in Louisville, I mean, we have all 4 seasons, right? My HVAC guy, God, I know my HVAC guy probably better than anybody I know, and I talk to him all the time. He's a great guy. I just sold his condo, actually. And he's actually coming on the podcast. He's going to tell us a little bit about, preventative maintenance, how important it is, things like that.
Yeah.
But these trades are going to make a huge resurgence, right? And I could go into my whole college thing, and that's probably for a different podcast with a different title. But I think what we do to these kids is absolutely criminal with the college debt that we leave them with, and I think I've talked about it on a past podcast. And I don't even really know where I was going with the rest of that story. I just thought it was pretty cool that I closed the house with a pretty famous guy because people recognized him as he walked into the closing. Like they're like, "Hey, you're so and so."
That's crazy.
So
Daggone.
pretty cool. That wouldn't, it's not happened to us with Real Estate Unfiltered yet. I haven't
No.
been at Sam's or
We're
Costco
close,
and somebody
though.
been
We've
like,
got to be close. Got to be close.
Keep telling yourself that, Jay. Keep telling yourself. But I will tell you that we were talking about the market earlier, and it has shifted pretty considerably. And the interesting thing is, and everybody knows kind of where we are. So just to kind of snapshot everything, we're up in the 7s consistently with rates. In fact, I wrote a contract the other day and wrote rate not to exceed 6.8, and then had to rewrite it. I was like, oh God, we're way past that. I had to rewrite it. So, but we're in this interesting point in the market. Inventory's building. Winter months are typically slower anyway. So we're over 21. It was like 2,145, I think, is what was in the market right before we went on air.
Right.
So inventory's building. rates are up there, right? They're at, at highs they haven't been in a while, but and we've talked about it. It's beating a dead horse. I think you need to live somewhere. As we made fun of our broker Craig Mayer the other day, if we've been saying date the rate and fall in love with the house for months now, and Craig just busted it out in the office like it was something brand new. I was like, where have you been?
He's about a couple months behind. That's typical for him.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. He still wears pleated pants and he still does all that stuff too, so it's okay. We still love him. But man, we're at an interesting point, and there are a lot of agents in the market now that haven't been through a market like this because they've only known the heyday, right? They've only known multiple offers, showings, nonstop. They've only known that. I think we're about to hit a point where the buyer is got some leverage. Now they're borrowing money at a higher rate, but you can always refinance that, and we're probably going to have some lenders on. Potentially Mike and some other guys. There are some loan products out there to help deal with these higher rates, right? I've heard stories about a lender locally that is including a free refinance. If you close now, down the road you can have a no origination fee refi or something like that. I don't know all the details, but stuff like that's coming, right? Because we have to continue to lend money. People need to continue to buy houses.
Right.
But two examples that I had this past week in the two houses that I got under contract. The first house had sat on the market for a while, and it was already discounted considerably under what the neighborhood would carry. It was a new neighborhood out in Shelbyville. But we literally countered 4 times. I had 3 counteroffer agreement addendums attached to and we got a home warranty, and we got a ping pong table, and we got a couch, and we got and we got and we got all the appliances, we got washer dryer, the whole deal, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that shows that it is shifting a little bit because a few months ago you would never have gotten that.
Oh my God! Right? Could you imagine writing that offer?
No, I think we said at one point, or maybe I said it on the super famous podcast that I was on, because they asked about our market here, right? And I said, well, there was a time that basically, we laughed about it, but you just hand the contract over to the seller and say, you go ahead and fill this out like what you want.
Exactly like you want it.
And then send it back to us and we'll sign it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously we're joking about that, but it was different, drastically different a couple months ago. So I do think it's kind of turning a little bit towards. I don't know. Buyers have a little more.
You're right on the money, and I even told them they were going to be on the podcast. So Cam and Abby, if you're listening, you've made, and there's some other stories that are going to come out with a couple of. We sold their house, and now we're in the process of buying them a house. So, but a couple of things have happened along the way that are great stories for the podcast. But we had literally 4 times batted back and forth. And we got a discount on the house, and we got closing costs paid for. And we got a bunch of we got some personal items on an addendum that's between the buyer and seller. And just so everybody is aware, those typically don't go into the real estate contract. That's an agreement between the buyer and the seller that we keep outside of, and they negotiate all that
like
stuff.
Ping pong tables.
Like ping pong tables, exercise mats. There are a couple other things on there, right? So cool. that is a huge indication to me that the market has shifted, right? Mm-hmm. But there are still houses closing, right? I've had 2 or 3 in the last couple of weeks. Jay's just had 2. You've got 1 coming up, Zach. Yep. I've got 4 pending. Hallelujah. Yeah, thank God. Mama's happy, right? Leandra's happy, and that's not to brag. That's just to tell people that business is still continuing.
Yeah, it's still going.
Yeah. The other one that I just did, same kind of scenario. Mm-hmm. We were below asking. Jay actually showed the house for me because I thought I was having a heart attack, but that's a whole different story for a whole nother podcast. But we were able to get it below asking. We were able to get closing cost included. We were able to get a home warranty included. So Anthony, when he comes on and talks about his home warranties, he's there's nobody more excited about the real estate business turning than what Anthony is. So the market's in a shift, and I think it's healthy. It's a pretty drastic. I don't want to say reaction because I think it's too late coming. I think it's a pretty drastic measure has been taken to drive the demand out of the market. I think we've got another at least a half point to a 3/4 point raise ahead of us, if not 2. And they said they're probably going to raise into 2023. So I think rates are going to continue to be elevated. Now, as we've learned in the past, the mortgage-backed securities and that whole arm, they try to anticipate what the Fed's going to do with these rates. So if they do hit a 50 or a 75 basis point hike, my gut tells me that the mortgage side of things have already baked those into rates.
Right.
Anything less than 3/4, like if they just do a half, I think rates drop, right? And people are like, well, the Fed rate went up. No, that's not how it works.
Right.
They're anticipating, right? And so they've already baked that in. So you lock in on a loan now, you're going to get locked in on that. So,
Yeah.
but I think they'll fluctuate. I think we'll be in the 5-6 range for a while. And I mean, probably, a year or so, right?
Yeah.
But we just came out of the hottest market we've ever seen
Man.
in the history of real estate in the city. It's the hottest market that we ever came out of.
Yeah.
And it wasn't
sure.
that definitely wasn't sustainable. So
Oh God,
what's
no.
happening now is everything that we talked about was
Should have happened
it's just-
sooner.
It's coming to light right now.
So we actually know a little bit about what we're talking about. So
Maybe just a tad.
So I mean,
Just a tad.
I think I think things are out there to be bought and sold, and it's really, is it right for you? And
Exactly.
I think Jay's hit this every podcast. Home prices have dipped; they haven't fallen, they haven't plummeted. Right? I think is kind of the word you used. So
I don't think they're going to. I don't think people compare it to 2008. It's not. I don't think, in my opinion, that it's 2008-ish. I mean, the market's totally different. The dynamics is different.
I'm gonna fly by the seat of my pants here.
Oh God!
Right? I read something the other
Not
day.
another felony, right? You're not
He was
gonna
like, I think
go
he was like 4 in 2008.
Yeah,
read
yeah,
something.
no doubt. Yeah, exactly.
I read something the other day, and it said that the Louisville home market has only depreciated like twice in the last 50 years.
Right.
And that was like 81, I think, and 2008, 2009. Yeah.
Yeah. And 81 would make sense too. I mean,
We remember 81. I mean,
Yeah.
I was not even a thought.
I was hanging out with Zach's mom in 81.
Oh my god!
No, but I don't think that. I think that 2023 is going to be. I don't think it's going to be terrible for anybody. I just think it's gonna. We're just going to kind of
Different.
chill. We're just going to kind of chill for the
Be
year.
different.
I don't think it's going to be.
Now, there's no secret that there are literally, I hear numbers all the time, but there are over 5,000 real estate agents. I've heard upwards of almost 6,000 real estate agents in the city of Louisville, right?
God bless.
So I think there's going to be not only a healthy pullback in the market, I think in those that service the market, there might be a healthy pullback. I would venture a guess on the lending side of things. You could throw a rock and hit a lender. I mean, everything
Yep.
we've talked about.
Yep.
There's going to be some adjustments, and it's more that people realize that, hey, it's a tough way to make a living. It's not always, rainbows and unicorns and puppies, right? Like this is a tough way to make a living. It's the most rewarding way. It's literally, I can't wait to get to work every day. It's enjoyable. It's fun. It's all that stuff, but it can be a challenge. I mean, it can be a challenge. You got to navigate a lot of obstacles. And I tell, our agents all the time, the most difficult thing we do is find buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
Contracts
for sure.
easy to read, easy to understand.
Problems are easy to work out.
Well,
Most of the time.
that's debatable. That's debatable. I mean, you had one this week. How short did you come up on an appraisal? you had?
15.
So 15,000, and thankfully
I think it was 18 actually. Not
18,000, and
Yeah.
they were willing. They were already covering 4,000, and
Yeah.
so you guys were able to. Get
So
it
we're
done.
not in the worst position in the world, but
So,
yeah.
and again, business will continue. I mean, there's always going to be a housing market. There's always going to be a stock market. So these markets operate. They're I don't want to say living and breathing things, but they do. They move up and down, and that's just part
Right.
of it. So, but
Right.
yeah. So, and I did mention. I don't know. I told you I felt like I was having a heart attack last Thursday, but you didn't even care, Zach. So that's okay. It's okay. Like you just brushed right over that. You didn't ask if I was okay. You didn't ask anything.
But you're still breathing, so I assume it wasn't a heart attack.
Thankfully, it was a little scary deal. I found this whole new health journey, right? Jay's lost all his vacation weight, so that's a good thing, right? You're down some weight. You told me before we went on air?
When I started making conscious change, I was 197 pounds. and that was not cool. I was.
Those
not
were the
liking
Taco
that.
Bell drive-through nights, right?
Yeah, a little bit. But now I'm down to 170 again, so we're all back to normal.
Yeah, and
It's my quarantine 27 or
there you
25
go.
pounds, whatever it was.
There you go. So you're down about. So I shot up to about 197, somewhere in that range, and I've weighed in at 168, and feel great. Working out a ton, right? Lots of mountain bike riding. Actually, how did I even forget this?
I was hoping you would forget this.
Damn it! How did I forget this? So, is everybody knows I love, like, I hate exercise, but I love to ride my bike, and it's always been that way. I raced BMX when I was a kid. I've always had, bikes have always been a thing. Worked at a bike shop, raced mountain bikes when I was in college, just a little, like nothing big, right? Just local races or whatever. So I've always enjoyed riding bikes, but I hate to do cardio. Hate to run. Running is the most miserable thing in the world, and we work for a guy that loves to run, right? So, but ride my bike is the thing, right? So we're pretty fortunate. We live close to the Parklands, and for anybody that doesn't know, there's a 100-mile loop of a park system that wraps around the entire perimeter of Louisville. And in Turkey Run off Belltown Road or near Belltown Road, they have some amazing mountain bike trails. They have a flow track. They have all the stuff. They flew people in from California to create a lot of the stuff. So it's really, really awesome, right? And so I like to ride. So I like to hang out with my buddies. I would consider Jay a buddy. So I may have
Nice.
You've upgraded.
I may have pressured Jay into going mountain biking with us last week, and I'm happy to report he survived. It was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago.
I don't know. I still feel it though.
The-
I won't say I disliked it, but I don't think it's my thing. But I didn't dislike it. It's very difficult. It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But again, he gave me some bike that I don't think was really set up for.
So the bike is
He set
fine.
you up
It
for failure.
was. He did give me a nice bike, but
The bike is fine. Now we had a little adjustment error on the seat, but
Yeah.
Jay came down. So for those of you that don't ride mountain bikes, right, when you ride uphill, you like to stay in the seat, right? Just you climb better, it's more efficient. And then when you're coming down,
More than I knew. I'd be standing up trying to.
when you're coming down the hill, you like to get out of the seat, hang your butt over the back wheel, lower your center of gravity. That way you don't go over the front handlebars, right? And when you're coming downhill.
I
Jay
feel like
was
I'd be
rolling down the
toast.
hill. I have what's called a dropper seat post on my bike, so you can hit a lever and it drops down, so it gets out of your way, so you can get your butt back over the tire when you're coming downhill. And Jay literally had it almost at its lowest setting, cruising downhill. Literally, his knees were up by his ears. He
ever
was
seen the
sitting
movie
so-
Friday?
Yes.
Debo's
Yes.
riding the beach cruiser.
Yes.
And a big boy on
Yes.
the bike. That's what it looked like.
If you don't drop Debo in one of the reels, I swear.
Do you know who I'm talking about? Yeah, that's what it looked like me
he
on the
just
beach.
died
cruiser.
recently. He died a couple years
Did he?
ago. Yeah.
Probably from around that bike.
Literally
Dude,
just
that
watched those
movie,
movies last weekend.
is fantastic. Of course, being named Craig, I heard it my entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
heard
I
it.
look like on the mountain bike. But it was good. They took me to the warm-up track first.
Yeah.
And like we got done with the warm-up track, I was like, that's good. We can go back.
Yeah.
No.
And then we
had
proceeded
Oh,
to ride
man.
8 miles. It took us about
Oh, my
it took us about an hour and a half. We actually we got a late start thanks to the Corrigan brothers, but we got a late start and it gets dark early. So we ride with headlights. So we have headlights that we put on our
So
bikes.
you have to ride in the woods in the dark.
Yeah, not a big deal.
You can go next time, and I'll stay home.
Not a big deal.
So
So
we both go and fill together.
So the funny thing is, well, funny from where I was sitting, from where Jay was sitting, probably not so funny. Is so Jay, and he should have struggled, right? I mean, it was his first
I
time.
did.
It was his first time, right? Everybody usually does, and we ride like 8 miles, and man, it is a workout. Like my heart rate consistently is between my max heart rate's like 180 something, right? I'm usually in that 165 to 175 range, and you're cranking for a full hour, dude. I mean, you're just rolling through this thing the only time you can kind of catch a breath is on the downhills. And so you burn probably 700, 800 calories every time you're out. So,
Shit.
and it's usually an hour ride. The night Jay went with us was an hour and a half, but we're trying to get his equipment right and all this stuff.
Well,
right?
we did have another a bike breakdown.
We did, yeah. Troy Corrigan had a flat, and he had to get that taken care of on a bike that cost more than 2 of the cars that I own put
oh my
together.
god!
But anyway,
It was an excellent workout. Very, I do like the row machine, things like that at the
Yeah.
gym. It's not even close to the same.
so So Sean and I were kind of up front. We weren't dealing with mechanicals. We weren't first. So we just kind of went up, and then there's certain places we wait for everybody to catch up. Well, the last section that we wait from the time that we started the second to last section, it got dark quick. And I had only brought one light, and I forgot to give it to Jay. So I was I was a considerable amount ahead of Jay. So when we waited, Jay was struggling, and it was dark. It was real dark. And Jay got up there. It's like, man, I left my other light sitting on the table in the garage. And so I gave him my light, and I rode out with no light. But
I would not have made it out had he not stopped and gave it to me.
So you were just riding a bike in the middle of the woods in the dark.
If you
in just darkness.
So here we are right now at 8:08 on a
about that
Tuesday
time.
night, and this is about what time we were riding, and this is how dark it was outside. So for those of you watching or listening,
Well, and I wouldn't have made it because
Man,
on these trails there's root systems,
Dude.
rocks. It
Dude,
was a workout, but I would not have made it out with no light.
it's awesome. And so all your senses hit a different level. So I rode the day I thought I was having a heart attack. I rode I was at the park at 7:00 in the morning. Right, I beat the park. The park ranger was there. I think I might have interrupted on some Pornhub or something. I don't know, because he was quick to leave, dude. I'm just saying, right? He was parked over in the corner with his lights on. I pull up and he's going, right? So I got out that morning, and I had to ride with my light in the morning because sunrise not till about 7:45, right? So rolling through the woods, man, deer are looking at me like, what the hell is this dude doing in here so early? Kind of the same deal, but when you ride during the day, there's other activity. There's hikers, there's all that stuff. So the wildlife kind of is keeping their distance. And we see deer when we ride all the time. We see chipmunks, whatever. But at night, all that stuff starts to get closer to the trail, and you'll like see eyes as you're like, and man, keep in mind you're riding over roots and rocks, and you're doing all this, and you're bouncing around, so your light's bouncing all over the place. You might catch a reflection of an eye, some eyes over here, and some stuff. But your senses just heighten so much because you're hearing stuff. You're like, the hell was that? Like you're hearing stuff break in the woods, and you're like, when you can see it, it's like, oh, it was a squirrel or whatever. But now you're going, freaking Sasquatch is behind me here,
Dude.
It was a good time. You can go next time, Zach. That'll be perfect for
We'd
you.
love to have you, Zach. That's an open invite.
I'll try. I would try. I might, put everybody to shame, catching air and spinning 360s and whatnot.
We'd love to see that. We don't do any of the X Game stuff just because, like, there are a couple trails. So, like, some of the downhill stuff, Crazy Reds has got the big wall ride. It's got tabletops and doubles and things you can jump. And I've ridden it and I've jumped some of that stuff. But dude, at my age, almost 50, it's rubber side down, brother. It is. If I get air now at my age, it's
rubber side
purely on accident. If my wheels lead, now there are a couple of little jumps on the single track on the cross country trails that I'll hit occasionally, but that stuff over there is for the legit dudes, and they come up there, man, and they're like doing whips and they're doing all this stuff, right? All these crazy things.
Yeah, see, I'm not really like that. I was just,
But there's also
making a
flow
joke.
trails like Piglet and the other trails on the other side, and you can just point it downhill and go. And I mean, there's some bumps and berms and things like
Right.
that, but they're not those big jumps, the big wall rides, things like that. There's the training track. The cool thing is this whole setup, and it's one of the great things about living in Louisville, but this whole setup is amazing. And so they have pump tracks for the kids. And so what a pump track is you can, with the momentum of the bike over the backside of the jumps or the mounds, you can generate enough speed. And if you watch somebody who knows what they're doing, they can start flying, and they pick up speed every time they go around, but it's all working the jumps and working the backside of the jump. So you can teach a kid to ride the pump track, right? And they ride on those Strider bikes where they don't have any pedals and they just kind of zoom around the track.
Right.
Then you take them over to the warm-up loop, which we did, which has got some berms, it's got some little bitty jumps, and it's got a big drop-off that you can do, but there's a way around that. And it's got some obstacles, so it's got a teeter-totter, and it's got all the stuff that you can ride your bike on just to get them ready to go on the other stuff. And then Crazy Reds it's pretty hardcore, and then the trough is the other one. It's pretty hardcore. So, I mean, but the problem with going down is you got to come up. Mm-hmm. And so, dude, to climb up from any of the downhill stuff is brutal. The cross country stuff is kind of up and down, up and down.
Right.
So,
But Zach, you would think if a guy took you out mountain biking, right? And he set you up with all the gear. I mean, he hooked it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you not think that he would tell you about the ability to shift gears?
I did tell him about it.
I mean, like
Seems like some valuable.
no, he
information.
did. He did tell me, but
I did.
he did tell me, but if you didn't hit him right, it was rough.
And that's the cool thing about the sport.
I walked several places because
Did you?
one of them. Yeah, one of them I was gonna die, so I just got off.
So
Well,
you were
that's
about to die. Craig's having
And
a
they're
heart attack.
gone. They're gone.
Why would I
Dude,
want to go do this?
Well, the day I had a heart attack, that was an interesting day, and that was I think that was breathing some cold air in the morning and then getting some hotter air when I got back to the house. We worked our way through that. It did take me out for about a day, and Jay was kind enough to pinch hit for me, so I do appreciate that. So.
It took you out for a day?
Took me out for a day, man. I left the office, and it's probably one of the few times I've ever left the office. I came in and did a little work. I had some repair requests to write up, and wrote those up, and then told Jay. In fact, you know what? It was the night that we were going to record a podcast, and I had it. Yeah. So Jay showed a house for me, and I ended up getting that house under contract. So Jay's the lucky charm. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
I'll do what I
awesome.
can.
He's the only thing that broke that Trinity losing streak. But.
God
Shit.
bless.
We're gonna open with that and close with that.
Yeah,
on the old Trinity.
absolutely.
My goodness.
Well, with that being said, if anybody's ever interested in mountain biking, let me know. Hit me up. Love to get out and do it. With that said, I can't thank you guys enough for tonight. I think we talked about a lot of good stuff. Our goal, again, is just to pull back the curtain, use a common language that everybody can understand when it comes to real estate, expose some potential pitfalls, whether it be with a wholesale deal, whether it be with rentals, whatever it might be. We want to just inform our audience and then encourage them to partner up and team up with a licensed professional to help guide them through the process. So that's kind of our goal. Team up with local businesses, promote local businesses coming up. We've got Radon Systems of Louisville. We've got 210 Home Warranties. We've got Your Best HVAC service coming in. I got a buddy of mine that has started a new venture in the car business with appraising. A guy I went to high school with. He's got a fantastic podcast, and we'll plug that one as we get closer to his. So anyway, we just got some really exciting things coming up. Thank you guys again, and thank everybody that's tuned in and watched. Do us a huge favor. It helps us out a bunch. Like, subscribe, share, whatever you can do to help kind of grow this. We would certainly appreciate that. And with that, Zach, get us out of here.
All right.